Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank the association and Susana for her invitation. It is a pleasure to be in Buenos Aires. Thank you, IUFoST, for organizing this. It is the first time I come to talk in Buenos Aires, which means 2016 will go down in history as a great year for being here. And so, as usually happens in some of the last speaker this morning, everyone has been said. And so, the only thing that I would like to say is I would like to maybe summarize what everyone else has said. Understanding that I'm the only one standing between you and lunch. So I will try to be as brief as possible. Food safety as a challenge was my subject. In reality, safety management is complex, and so I will try to speak to some of the elements that have an impact on food safety management, publicly and privately, trends, regulations, social, economic, anthropological aspects. Food safety is affected by a huge amount of factors that are very different from one another. Perhaps one of the main implications or one of the main factors affecting safety is the increase in chains. In food commercialization chains, companies are buying from 50 countries and selling to 100 countries. Some companies are buying from hundreds or thousands of suppliers in 5 continents, and then they sell in the same way. The way in which our business penetrates the world economy impacts significantly the scenario. It means production specialization. It means that we are developing activities that are more intense in specific places in the chain, specific parts of it, processing, secondary processing, primary processing. And it also means that production is concentrating, and that means that there will be more animals, larger crops, and so risks will grow. Rice for 5 is not the same as rice for 5,000. It is the same technique: water, salt, boils, cover it, but the risk of making it is quite different. The same applies to specializations and concentration. Also, there are large journeys from here to there, from there to here. There are different distances and long distances and longer life cycles and useful lives, and so more risks are entailed. And so another important characteristic of the new global commerce is the food flow from the south to the north. It is almost exclusively from south to north. We export so much more than we import, and that means huge differences, since in both hemispheres countries have different institutional and regulatory capabilities. In the northern hemisphere there are more demands. There are regulations that are more substantial than in the southern hemisphere. Requisites and our expectations are also multiple. Governments, consumers, everyone have more and more demands. And also there are some affairs that are regulated. This shows some of the hundreds of factors that are in the vast body of food regulation. There are things that actually impact us all, and some are more specific. There are so many regulations and such a variety of aspects. If we talk about the Codex Alimentarius for the rest of the world, but also produced by a large number of institutions, different kinds of institutions from different countries, commercial agreements like Mercosur, commercial free trade areas. So there are different requirements that need to be observed. I would like to talk about a few things such as traceability, demonstration of authenticity, the capacity to show origin, processing conditions, and now it is really important with the change of the safety law in America, the compulsory recall. So the need to prepare better for market products, which is closely linked to better traceability. Science progress also has an impact on safety management. And one of the most important breakthroughs in management, which determine the status of it, is the greater capacity to detect and quantify pollutants. Everyone says that it is more difficult today to hide something when it comes to food safety. And there are outbreaks, such as the one we had in America last year, where it was the microorganism technology, detection technology, that allowed to detect different mysterious cases, which were then linked to some cases that happened beforehand. So it is a great capacity that is a capability that is given by these maps that let us reveal problems that can be substantial. Companies say we are more visible today, not only because they are larger, but because we have a greater capacity for contaminant detection. Climate change. This is just a summary, just like I said. Climate change. The resource scarcity and natural resource scarcity and the changes that we have and the accelerated way in which microorganisms change. When I think about climate change, I think about the problem that happened in Germany, that microorganism that we didn't know until it killed 200 people. How many people? In one day. And we didn't know that one. We knew like a great-great-great-grandmother of that one. But that one we didn't know. So over the course of 10 years, it became a really harmful strain. And also temperature affects the distribution of food. I know companies that distribute low-risk products, such as jam or chocolates, that had to change their distribution systems because of temperature increase. They can no longer distribute a lot of products at room temperature, because room temperature can be 50 to 60 degrees Celsius in closed containers, so they need to be refrigerated or do other technological modifications to tackle the changes associated to climate change. Diet changes as well. A migration to healthier vegetarian food or alternative sources of protein, which also entail substantial changes. ¿Terminados? Remember the problem in Germany that I just mentioned? That happened during a healthy eating stage in their history. And the first people that were affected, when they're profiling it, there were women between 40 and 50 years old that were about 40 kilograms. They were going to the gym, they were eating vegetarian diets, they were healthy, and they ended up being affected. And so diet changes also have an impact on food safety. In Latin America, and someone said this before, I believe that the relationship between nutritional health and safety is deepening and is creating new regulations. So when we have regulation for nutritional health and food safety, this creates new challenges for both regulators and the industry. And there's also risk perception, what people consider to be risk, which is not necessarily so. This picture says, this is from a well-known site, it says reasons to never eat processed foods again. And so it says this, which is not actually true. It is not true that food is completely loaded with pesticides, but there is a general perception that the industry is poisoning people with pesticides. Or say this, that eating 2 ounces of meat, 57 grams of meat every day means that you're 42% more exposed to heart disease. Well, so Argentines, I mean, how do they survive? But that message, that kind of message really affects people's perception of things. And like someone said before, it might create in a community the idea that the industry is poisoning us and regulators are not doing anything, which also exerts pressure on regulators.
Then the level of exposure at social media. What? The trends, hashtags, terrible hashtags about one thing or another. They also do. Let's see how they are things that increase vulnerability and visibility both of companies and regulators. A rumor, a phrase in social media might have and has had terrible consequences for companies. That's why we have to consider so many things, war reach, value changes, traceabilities, technological changes. There are many items that pressure or exert some pressure in regulations, both, I mean, not only to say both for industry as for authorities, and also because consequences of the lack of safety are huge: inefficiencies, reprocesses, rejections, reanalysis, in non-compliance of agreements in terms of penalties, economic and different penalties. In the U.S. are sending people associated to Sprouts to jail. And Mr. Parnell has been punished with 80 years of prison due to his salmonella scandal. So there is a lot of pressure that implies for companies and for governments to give a strategic view for food safety. Safety is way too important to leave it just loose. Strategic planning based on that basic concept of having a policy or some policy goals linked to strategy goals, strategies, projects, everything that is like a downfall, like a drop down in an entire country, an entire organization. In this part of the talk, I will go into what Susana asked me, please do not go over what has already been said, but what Susana told me was just please explain what do industries do, what do countries do in order to approach the complexities associated to food safety. And what I say is that what large companies do is based on comprehensive and structural strategies for safety, not to approach safety under the outdated approach of comply with the minimum when I asked to sweep everything under the rug when the inspector comes, just when I have an inspection, to have a strategic vision of safety as it should be for an entire country like ours, exporting food and that are trading foods based on which imply a basis for rural development and economic growth. All strategies must be based on trust. I think that what companies look for with their safety strategies is for people to trust in their brands, in their products, in order for them to purchase their products, for businesses to grow, for everyone to trust, from authorities to customers up to their own sellers, because safety crisis involve that an agent, someone that are affected is the sales force, sales people that are selling the product and receive a sick customer are the ones that are in the battlefront. That's why I mentioned trust here. This is a scheme, a strategic planning scheme that I propose companies that picks up the need to build trust permanently in an ongoing way. This person, Irene Rosenfeld, is not only the CEO of a large company, but a huge influence, and she reminds us of the need to build trust on a daily basis. This slide will pick up what an organization does to strengthen the trust in the brand, especially a large organization. They would have 3 strategic goals in order to get to strengthen the trust, aligning the organization with their people, the optimization of control of all efforts for having this care, and to have a broader visibility. For people to trust in a company or a country requires the company or the country to have this safety. And I realize that many companies and countries tell what they do and they are proud about what they do, but so that people can trust them. And I have seen some others that they say, oh, we're so far from it, that can be encouraging and challenging and also discouraging as well. To align the organization through a strategy of cultural change, and that culture is safety, which is a relatively new scheme, but that implies huge effort from the organizational viewpoint. Companies based on knowledge and so many efforts of e-learning, as we were showing before, optimization of the control under the risk approach, risk management, risk assessment in companies of risk approach, which has this new approach, which are called on analysis, preventive analysis based on risk control, and to involve more risks within the organization and visibility through collaboration or the chain approach with suppliers, with health authorities, the collaboration among everyone, and the visibility through labeling, for example, or network or social media management. In my opinion, this summarizes some strategies, some efforts that are made by organizations in order to approach this complex issue of safety management. I like this strategy. It is just a personal opinion and selection of the things that I think the industry is doing. There are many things, and there are many things that I like about this strategy. First, it is based on people, and two, it is based on knowledge. It is evident how the industry has been understanding the value of knowing and being acquainted with the risk approach issue in the industry, and just like regulators use the management and assessment of risks, the use of the industry can lead to contribute to this approach. I could spend a couple of hours talking about each of these elements. Of course, I'm not doing it, but just give a special stress to social media. It is important to understand what it is said about the organization and to do some issue management. In Colombia, I would say to just lead with the ugly part of the situation, which is what are they saying, what are the bad comments about the organization in order to deal with them and to manage these key issues strategically and in advance, to have safety strategy based on knowledge, on science, on people, to strengthen the trust of a brand, a company, or a country. That's my main message. Thank you once again for your invitation.